This historic trade deadline seems to be getting crazier and crazier, with a massive 3-team deal just being announced. We now have De'Aaron Fox heading to the San Antonio Spurs to pair up alongside Victor Wembanyama. Talk about having the best pick and roll offense in the NBA. And if you were to look around the league and try to find a superstar duo that best fits alongside Wembanyama, you would find yourself looking at De'Aaron Fox, and the Spurs realized this, which is why they did everything in their power to go out and get him. And in return, the Kings will be receiving a ransom. Not only will they get 3 future first-round picks, Charlotte's 2025, San Antonio's 2027, Minnesota's 2031, they'll also be receiving 3 second-round picks, but most importantly, they are still trying to win now, which is why they went out and got Zach LaVine from the Chicago Bulls. And if you're wondering what the Bulls got in all of this, well, honestly, they kind of got fleeced, because in return, the Bulls will only be receiving Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and most importantly, their own pick in 2025 via the San Antonio Spurs. Now, what this trade did for the Bulls was give them a chance to hit that reset button. They couldn't tank if they didn't have their own pick, but now that they have their own first-round pick, they can be a bit more willing to lose, which is why Zach LaVine basically got shipped out for nothing. And if you're a Bulls fan, all you can really do at this point is cry yourself to sleep. Because after waiting far too many years to trade your core away, you basically got nothing in return. You trade Alex Caruso last year, you get Josh Giddey. That's it. Then you lose DeMar DeRozan in free agency, so basically in the sign-in trade, all you end up receiving is Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks. Absolutely terrible. And at the end of the day, you don't get much of anything for Zach LaVine. The Bulls have done almost nothing right over these last few years, but at least they're trying to rebuild. And so that's about it for the Bulls this video, because who really cares about this team? Let's more focus on the San Antonio Spurs, who will be receiving the star in this deal, and that is De'Aaron Fox. Was De'Aaron Fox a bit overpaid in the sense that the Spurs ended up giving 3 first-round picks? Maybe, but it doesn't matter, because they're going to get good fast. They see Victor Wembanyama as their timeline. And with Victor Wembanyama having an uncertain amount of years in the future, they're trying to win now. And that's exactly what they did by going out and getting a 1-time All-Star, 1-time All-NBA, and 1-time Clutch Player of the Year award winner. Now, De'Aaron Fox has been in the NBA for about 8 seasons at this point, and throughout the entirety of his career, he spent it with the Sacramento Kings. I don't know how he was able to last that long in Sacramento, but this season for the Kings, he's gone out and averaged 25 points, 6.1 assists, a career-high 5 rebounds, 1.5 steals, because getting a lot of steals is his thing, all while shooting nearly 47% from the field and 32% from the three-point line. Of course, the last few years have been a bit better for De'Aaron Fox, but this whole issue of whether he's going to re-sign or if he was going to be traded has affected his play this season, along with the fact that the Kings as a whole were underperforming. They were looking to probably be a play-in team, and if the play-in didn't go the right way, they could have very well missed the playoffs for back-to-back years, which would have been a total disappointment for the franchise. So I think that with De'Aaron Fox finding a new home, those numbers will improve, especially because he'll have a much larger role with the Spurs. All they really have is Victor Wembanyama and a bunch of solid young pieces who I know will be good in the future, but for right now, De'Aaron Fox is the clear number 2. And while he may have been the number 1 in Sacramento, there were a lot of guys who were fighting for possession over there. And now that's going to be Zach LaVine's problem. And Zach LaVine is another interesting piece to this trade, because Zach will be heading to the Sacramento Kings and will be paired up alongside DeMar DeRozan. And what's interesting about this is that they were a duo just last year on the Chicago Bulls. And did they work well as a duo? No, not really, which is why the Bulls blew it up. So the fact that the Kings thought maybe having DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine come together again was a good idea beats me. And we'll talk more about what this Kings team looks like going forward in a second. But for right now, I just want to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000. Every subscription is greatly appreciated, so it would help if you subscribe. Alright, now let's get to talking about the Kings side of this. Because what's interesting about the Kings is, like I said, they were pretty disappointing this season. Sure, they're better than both the Bulls and the Spurs, but they had much higher expectations because with the duo of De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, they had made the playoffs 2 years ago. So they believed that in the offseason, by adding a guy like DeMar DeRozan, that would bring in enough star power to kind of push them over the hump in this stacked Western Conference. And as we know, that's just not how things shaped up, which is why De'Aaron Fox is out the door and in comes a guy like Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine is a two-time All-Star, and while he was winning those All-Star awards while that Bulls core was at its peak, it has been a few years now. This season for the Bulls, he's gotten out and averaged a good 24 points from the field, 4.5 assists, 4.8 rebounds while shooting 51%. We're talking a career high in efficiency for Zach LaVine. And then from the three-point line, he's shooting 44%, which is much higher than any other season he's had with the Chicago Bulls or the Minnesota Timberwolves. Zach LaVine is having a great season statistically, and while he may not be an all-star, I do think that he'll be a better fit than what De'Aaron Fox was for this team. And it's also nice to see Zach LaVine having a great season, considering the fact that he missed the majority of last year due to injury. He only played in 25 games. But if you take that out of the equation, he's done a pretty good job at staying healthy since joining the Chicago Bulls, because for the last 4 or 5 seasons, he's gotten just about over 58 games every year. And it looks like he'll do so again. However, this season, he will be ending it on the Sacramento Kings. And if there's any team that needs this deal to work out desperately in this trade, it's the Kings, because right now, like I mentioned, they're the 9th seed, and while there have been other trades happening around the league, no teams above them got any worse. I would argue that the Mavericks got better with the Luka Doncic trade. I would argue that the Lakers are still way better than the Kings are, and so the Kings are really going to have to fight to not only stay in the playoffs, but stay in the play-in, because if the Warriors make a move here, then there's a chance that the Kings fall to the 11th seed and miss the playoffs entirely, which is why I feel like they were the most desperate team in this deal. Because if you turn your attention to San Antonio, right now the Spurs are 21-26 with a handful of games away from the play-in. They know they probably aren't going to reach the play-in this season, however this trade was more for the future. Do I think De'Aaron Fox adds plenty more wins to this roster? Absolutely. But again, like I said, the Western Conference is just stacked. They're not completely rounded out yet. I feel as though this free agency, this offseason is going to be very important for the Spurs going forward. They're going to have a lot of money to work with because Wembanyama isn't on his massive contract yet, and De'Aaron Fox is going to need to be paid. But other than that, they've got a bunch of young pieces, a few draft picks that they can play with to kind of build this team up. Could they go out and get a third superstar? That's always a question that needs to be asked. But I think with the duo of De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama, going out and getting a third superstar isn't what this team needs. This team needs role players. We've seen teams go out there in the past and try and build a super team, aka the Phoenix Suns, and how's that worked out for them? At times they do look great, especially when the trio is playing together. However, if one of them is to go down with an injury, the team falls off a cliff because they have no supporting cast. So I think that the Spurs shouldn't make that mistake with De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama. But anyway, like I said, the Bulls are screwed. If you're a Bulls fan, you can cry, it's okay. The Spurs' future looks very bright, and the Sacramento Kings should be scared because what's about to happen next will determine the next 5 years of your franchise. But anyway, that's about it for this video. Catch y'all later. Much love.